Start your winning season at MyBookie. Sign up with MyBookie. Use our promo code Gators to get your first ever deposit match dollar for dollar. Bet anything, anywhere, anytime at MyBookie.
Want more Gators Breakdown? Join Gators Breakdown Plus. Starting at $3 a month. Get access to unique episodes, plus a blog, chat room, giveaways, shout-outs, and more. Gators Breakdown Plus is furthering the interaction with fans and listeners like you. Head to gatorsbreakdown.supportingcast.fm to join Gators Breakdown Plus today. Gators Breakdown. Because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters, and you can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. We got a game this week. It's a bowl game. Florida, UCF Gasperilla Bowl. You can't go by without letting a preview of that happen. Right here on Gators Breakdown, of course. Brandon Helwig, UCFsports.com, part of the Rivals Network, joins us right here on Gators Breakdown to help me preview the UCF Knights, the Gators' opponent in the bowl game, the final game under this staff, Dan Mullen's staff here, before we turn the page to Billy Napier and him taking over this Florida Gator program. We'll also get into the new hires of Billy Napier announced. The announcements are coming fast and furious there. So, we may even miss one by the time you listen to this, but we'll get you caught up to date with the latest hires under Billy Napier from the last time we talked last week about the hires. So a lot more, all these off-field, no more on-field announcements being made yet. The last one, Colbert, the wide receiver coach, last one that we've talked about on here. So we'll see if any more of those come about before the Christmas holiday. NFL season, of course, comes into play, and maybe some college football playoff teams there as well. So that might be why we are not hearing about some of those hires just yet. So we'll get into all those off-field hires before we sign off here on Gators Breakdown. But plenty to get into on this episode with the preview of the UCF Knights. All right, to get us started with this UCF preview, I bring on Brandon Helwig of UCFsports.com, part of the Rivals Network. Brandon, man, thanks for, first of all, happy holidays. Everything, Christmas coming up, New Year's coming up, all that good stuff. But thank you so much for hopping on Gators Breakdown during this time.
No problem. Anytime, David. I just kind of learned about your thing going and looking at some of the Gator sites. Watched a few of your streams about recruiting and kind of learned a little bit about what Billy Napier is going through. You're doing a great job.
Hey, thanks, man. A good friend, Tony Aguilini, brings us together here. So I know he reached out to both of us here to get this going. So Gasperilla Bowl between the Gators and the Knights. So, Brandon, the view of this game, I guess, from the UCF side, the fan base side, does it matter that Florida's coming into this game with a lame duck staff? Does it damper the enthusiasm for this game at all?
Not really. I mean, I'm not sure how much Florida fans have been kind of in tune to the whole UCF-UF dynamic. Obviously, UCF fans have really been into it the last few years. Obviously, when UCF was on their run a few years ago, undefeated season with Scott Frost, went to the Peach Bowl, beat Auburn. The next year, went to the Fiesta Bowl, and I know there was some, I don't know if we want to call it conspiracy theories. A lot of UCF fans wanted to match up that year at the end of 2018 against UF in the Peach Bowl, but whatever the rules or whatever they claim the rules were about, the G5 team had to go to this bowl or that bowl. I know Scott Strickland was on the playoff committee that year, and a lot of fans thought maybe he was, blocking a UCF-UF matchup. And I know there was a lot of, I don't know, trash talk or whatever you will, mostly fan generated about, who's the best team in Florida. And I know there was a lot of that going on. I know it's a game that I know UCF fans have been looking forward to. And it kind of bubbled up, or it really did this past summer when the two schools announced a future series, 2024 in Gainesville. I think it's 2030 at UCF and 2033, I think, in Gainesville. I think those are the correct years because, there was that kind of media rivalry amongst ADs. Now it's the past AD for UCF, Danny White. He was always talking about, we see UF as a peer school and we're only going to do home and homes. And Scott Strickland's like, well, you're a group of five school. We don't do home and homes with programs like you. So, Mike Bianchi, early News Sentinel columnist, kind of helped fan those flames a little bit. So I know that was a lot of fun, at least amongst fan bases. But for this game, I mean, I know this isn't the ideal scenario for UF right now, kind of like you said, a lame duck coaching staff, not a full strength team, but the same kind of you could say about is similar with UCF. They've had a lot of injuries. Didn't really expect to go through this season with a true freshman quarterback. But as far as fan bases go, none of that really matters right now. As we saw, the game sold out almost instantaneously. Yeah. I think when you talk about games right now, and I don't know if it's changed the last week, I think the only games that are sold out or on track to sell out are the 2 playoff games in this game. UF, UCF, the Gasperilla Bowl. So everyone's amped up. I know both teams sold out their allotments. They put out standing room only tickets, I believe, a few days ago. Those sold out. So I know it's not an ideal scenario maybe for UF right now, but I know at least from the UCF side, everyone is still really excited.
Yeah, no fan base wants to see their team lose a game either. So, might as well, Florida's undefeated out of conference games, beat FSU in the last game of the season. So you could say, you beat USF, you beat FSU, and the way all the other games have played out. If you want to claim a state championship, then, this is the last hurrah that stands in that way. So, some players can look at it that way. Some of the fans can look at it that way as well. So, Brandon, let's get to UCF just a bit here. How would you assess year one under Gus Malzahn, and how different has it been under the last 2 regimes for UCF with Scott Frost and Josh Heupel?
It's really kind of hard to grade just based on you had projections and expectations of how you think a season was going to go. And that was basically built around an offense that was going to be led by returning starting quarterback Dylan Gabriel. Put up a lot of yards the last couple of years under Josh Heupel. You had a really good running back transfer, Isaiah Bowser. He played at Northwestern. If you look at UCF's season opener against Boise, I mean, the offense was looking great. UCF won that game. Next week, they played Bethune-Cookman. Obviously, that was an easy victory against a lower-level opponent. Then that third week, UCF goes to Louisville, and that's kind of when everything started to pile up. That was a close game, back-and-forth game. UCF was driving at the end of the game to potentially win it, and Dylan Gabriel threw a pick six. That kind of obviously affected the outcome there. And then they're at the end of the game trying to throw a Hail Mary, whatever, and Dylan got hit on a play and broke his collarbone. It was like the final play of the game. He was down on the ground. People just kind of thought, is he just upset because UCF lost? Is he really hurt? Yeah, he really was hurt. He broke his collarbone. And also in that game, Isaiah Bowser hurt his knee. The number 1 wide receiver for UCF, Jalen Robinson, also had a knee injury. Starting defensive tackle, Ricky Barber, he had a knee injury. I mean, they were just piling up. So at that game, the UCF team after that game wasn't the same. You have they went to Mikey Keene, who was a true freshman quarterback. Really had looked good in the spring and summer, but I mean, he's a true freshman. I mean, no one really expected him to be thrust into a starting job, and that's just kind of the way it went. They had a bye week after that, and then they go on the road to Navy. And no, this isn't the same Navy team of maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but it's still the Navy offense, the option, and trying to defend that. And it's a great environment up there. And UCF lost that game. That's really the one game right now I think you should say that UCF should have won, and they did not. But from then on, I mean, they were just a multitude of injury issues just the entire year, and just 8-4. All things considered, is a really good result. I know there were some games. I know the fan base is like, you had to pull it out last quarter to beat Tulane. You had to, South Florida in a rivalry game on Black Friday, the last regular season games. You kind of had to stop them at the goal line just to hold on and win. Yeah, there were some tight games in there, but just with everything, with injuries, I still think you got to give Gus Malzahn an A just for how he handled everything. It wasn't ideal. Just like this wasn't an ideal year for Florida, even though UCF has had a reasonably good year at 8-4. It wasn't an ideal year based on maybe where fan expectations were.
Brandon, you mentioned, of course, the main storyline on the offense is Gabriel going down and Keene stepping in. But with that limited sample size, could you tell? I mean, how much did the offense actually change?
It changed a lot. It kind of just went from, especially with the some of the skill players that went down around him, just you didn't have the same weapons you did before. And so I think it kind of became an offense of what can Mikey do? And he's learning everything. He's learning how to read defenses. He's learning everything. I mean, he played at a high level in Arizona high school football, won a lot of games and championships out there, Chandler. But, this isn't the same thing, playing FBS major college football. So it was kind of managing what he can do, what his talents are. They didn't ask him to do a whole lot. And some of the receiver depth just wasn't the same with some of the injuries, and the running back depth was coming along. So, just doing whatever you could do to kind of limit turnovers and not, force them into risky throws, and just kind of plodding along. Like, it wasn't pretty. I mean, there were some games that, for what fans anyway had been accustomed to under prior regimes, just, checking the ball down the field and deep balls and, racking up, 400, 500, 600 yards a game. That wasn't the offense this year. And just, they didn't have the personnel to do that, which, it may not be Gus Malzahn's MO anyway, once he's full strength. I think he covets maybe, Mikey can get to that point, Mikey King, but I think he likes, more dual threat running backs. And we didn't really see a whole lot of that for Mikey this year in terms of his running ability, a little bit skittish to get out there and run. So, I mean, we'll see what the future holds with quarterback going forward, but it really wasn't the offense that we envisioned, that at least we saw when they were full strength, when they had Dylan at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, ultimately, Gus Malzahn would really love to rely on a strong running game with his running backs as well. And as you said, that there was a damper with that too, with Bowser going down. But it doesn't look like Johnny Richardson was able to kind of show up and make up a little bit for when Bowser goes down. But when Bowser was on the field, you could definitely see the capability that he brought to the table there. So I guess two things there. What is Johnny Richardson? What did he bring to the table? And has it been determined yet if Bowser is going to be available for this Gasperilla Bowl, giving the Knights a 1-2 punch on the night?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Johnny Richardson, an explosive guy, but UCF really went running back by committee when Bowser went down. When Bowser was healthy, I mean, they were leaning on him. Like, I got to look at some of the stats. I think he was getting like 25 carries a game. I mean, he was a workhorse. But they went with, Johnny Richardson was kind of next man up at times. They had Mark Anthony Richards, who was a transfer from Auburn, played for Gus obviously last year at Auburn. He's originally from Fort Lauderdale, and he transferred in over the summer. They were using him quite a bit, and just kind of different guys. But Bowser he'd been back. He tried to go a little bit late in the year. He was held out again at the end of the season. Didn't really see a whole lot of reps, but this, I guess it'll be almost a month since the last game. Well, he didn't even play in the last game. From what we gather, he's practicing, and they expect, I don't know if he'll be 100%, but he'll be as close to 100% as he probably will have been since the injury. So we're expecting a good deal amount of Isaiah Bowser. He's an older guy. I know he came into the season, everyone obviously hopes that they can put on the kind of season of performance to get looks at the next level in the NFL. He just had, he's had injury issues in the past at Northwestern, and obviously had injury issues this year. So I don't think he really has enough of a sample size to get NFL looks. So this is a big game for him. And also, we expect he hasn't announced anything. We expect he'll probably come back next year and try to, put on more of a show to hopefully, get that next level chance. But yeah, I think we're going to see a heavy dose of him on Thursday.
All right, Brandon Helwig from UCFsports.com joining us here on Gators Breakdown, previewing these UCF Knights. Brandon, I got to ask you, how big of a weapon is Ryan O'Keefe at receiver? It looks like a utility player a little bit for this offense.
Yeah, he was really, almost the only offensive weapon at times when you talk about receiver. Just, it wasn't a deep position, especially after Jalen Robinson. His nickname is Flash. Ever since Flash got injured, Ryan O'Keefe was pretty much the guy. And, he can do a little bit of everything. Obviously, he's got tremendous speed, but he was a quarterback at a high school level. And I got to look at it. I think he might be 2 for 2 passing this year. And I think both of those were touchdown passes on gadget plays. I know he had one at Louisville, and he had one in one of the games late in the season. So he's a guy that, he has that kind of threat. And, he's an experienced guy, and he was just kind of his third for a full year in the program, but, talented receiver, got a lot of speed. But the other thing is, hopefully, like I just talked about Isaiah Bowser, if he's closer to 100%, Jalen Robinson was another guy who was injured for most of the year, and with another month in between games, he got back late in the season. Didn't quite look himself from what we're accustomed to. But so if he's closer to 100%, that'll be huge, because wide receiver was not a deep position in terms of speed and getting separation from DBs and whatnot. So if both of those guys are healthy, and Ryan O'Keefe's been healthy the whole year, I mean that would be a huge benefit to Mikey King come Thursday.
Brandon, before we wrap up here, let's move to the other side of the ball. Big Cat Bryant comes over from Auburn, follows Gus Malzahn. Has he looked like an SEC defender playing against, the AAC teams there? And even with that name recognition, it does seem Tatum Bethune may be the player Gator fans really need to key in on when this game it kicks off on Thursday night.
Yeah, Big Cat Bryant, really is one of the best players for UCF on defense. I know he kind of turned heads. I think it was media day, late July, early August, whenever that was. He was kind of spouting off a little bit, saying he's going to be the best defensive player in the nation. UCF could beat Auburn, and he kind of, ruffled the feathers of a lot of Auburn fans there. But I mean, he's showed that he's a high level player. There was kind of some issues early in the season from actually executing and getting the sack, but he impacts almost every play. The sacks have eventually piled up for him, but if you just look at every play, he is making some, even though if he didn't have a tackle, he's doing something to impact that play. And something needs to be said that there's been a few games this year where he played every defensive rep, and sometimes it's hard to keep track of that in the course of a game, but if you're a DB, maybe a linebacker, that's not that uncommon, but for a defensive lineman to play every defensive rep, I mean, that doesn't happen very often. And he plays every rep at a high level. He has a relentless motor. He's been a great addition to UCF this year. He's jacked up for this game. He's excited. I mean, UCF, as far as we know, they don't have any opt-outs. I mean, I don't know why anyone would. I mean, unless you're, guaranteed maybe first or second round pick, but he's amped up for the game. Obviously, he wants to go out and look impressive against an SEC opponent. He's going to play in the Hula Bowl, which is actually going to be played at UCF in January. So I know he's amped up. And Tatum Bethune, who you mentioned, is UCF's leading linebacker, starter, leading tackler, a really good player. I mean, this is a tough guy that, has gotten, concussions and, all kinds of stuff and just little ailments and, hurt elbows and arms, and he keeps on playing. And, it's just, really a tough guy and a really good linebacker. And because we'll see. I mean, it'll be interesting because, you've got an interim staff that, you kind of wonder, how much preparation are there? Because most of those guys, correct me if I'm wrong, they're not sticking around at Florida beyond the game. Not. So what kind of game plan are they putting together? Is it, I know Emory Jones is playing, even though he said he's going to go in the portal. That's kind of a strange dynamic. I think your receiver, Jacob Copeland, is he playing? He's in the portal, right? He's in the portal. He said in the announcement on social media that he was going to play in the bowl game as well. So you got guys looking for their next stop while they're suiting up one more time for Florida. And the other thing, and I don't know if people kind of put two and two together, but UCF is looking for a portal quarterback to compete this spring. And, they've been in the mix for a few guys. Obviously, we just saw Bo Nix went to Oregon last night. That was a guy that, I'm sure Gus, we know he reached out to him. They were looking at guys like Adrian Martinez, who went to Kansas State, Michael Penix, Tampa native Indiana. He went to Washington. But if Emory Jones hits the portal, and we know he is, that could be a phone call that Gus Malzahn makes. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic right now.
He may not need to make a phone call, Brandon. He may just meet with him on the field after the game.
I know. That's an interesting thing. You've got a guy playing in a game that, I mean, I don't know what kind of option. I mean, he'll have options. Emory Jones. Would he be interested in UCF? Will UCF be interested in him? I wouldn't be surprised. So that's an interesting dynamic too now with this whole transfer portal that we've never had to think about before. That guys are kind of playing for their next job. So ironically, it could be one of the suitors could be a team that he's playing against. So that's just something interesting to watch on Thursday.
Brandon, before we let you go here, man, just let us know right here if whether we've discussed it already or we haven't. What do Florida fans really need to watch for either side of the ball for UCF, and if UCF will come out and win this game. With
UCF, like I said, we kind of talked about it at the onset. It's we'll see. I know Florida's going to be excited. I mean, I know people always talk about, our team's motivated. Are they kind of getting up to play? And it's hard to say, every player on the roster, I'm sure, is going to have different degrees of how excited they are for a game. I know, but I'm sure Florida, when it's all said and done, they got a new coach coming in. They don't want to loaf. They want to look good for the new guy, or even if they're transferring, they want to look good for, the next school they're going to play for. So when it's all said and done, I'm sure Florida's going to be amped up. We know UCF's going to be amped up. Gus, obviously with UCF going to the Big 12 in a couple of years, most likely 2023, UCF has been recruiting on a higher level than maybe they have in the past. And Gus Malzahn isn't shy. I mean, he's going to, maybe in years past, there's guys who are, you want to call them, Big 3 recruits, Florida type players, Florida State, Miami, UCF really wouldn't win those battles. And, they maybe won a few of those battles this year, which is something that has never happened at UCF before. So I know for Gus Malzahn, he would love nothing more. That would kind of cap off his first year in a positive way. If you could say he beat Florida, he'd be, the fan base obviously would go nuts, but just on the recruiting trail for where Gus wants to build this program would be a huge, talking point. I'm sure they'd never shut up about it during the off season and recruiting and spring and everything. So, UCF's going to be amped up. I just know that Gus is, and we're still kind of learning him and adjusting to, kind of learning his tendencies and his histories and stuff. But, he's going to pull everything, out of that hat to do whatever he can to try to win the game on Thursday.
All right, Brandon Helwig, man, thank you so much for joining us right here on Gators Breakdown, previewing the Central Florida Knights, as Florida will match up with them Thursday night in the Gasperilla Bowl in Tampa, Florida. Brandon, once again, thank you so much.
Enjoyed it very much, David. Thank you.
The holiday season is upon us, and MyBookie is in the giving spirit with 12 straight days of giveaways. Every day, there's a new exclusive promotion for you to redeem, and the best part is it's all free when you sign up and make your first deposit with MyBookie. Starting December 21st and ending on January 1st, you can bring in the new year the right way with giveaways that can help you fill your stocking with cash this season. From odds boost to casino chips to straight up blocks, MyBookie's 12 days of giveaways is a can't-miss promotion. And that's not all. To get you started, MyBookie is matching all first-time deposits up to $1,000. That deal's still going on. This is longer than it usually goes on. But matching all first-time deposits up to $1,000 with my promo code Gators, that's double your funds to double your winnings and get in on all the best action at MyBookie. So don't miss out. Double your first deposit up to $1,000 by using promo code Gators. Head to MyBookie. Place your bets and get in on the best 12 days of the year today. Bet anything, anywhere, anytime with MyBookie. All right, here we go. Let's get into Central Florida season. Coming into this bowl game, opened up the season with a win over Boise State, 36-31, Bethune-Cookman 63-14. And then as you heard us in the conversation there, lost to Louisville 42-35. And that's when their season kind of changed just a bit with all the injuries. They go the next week, lose to Navy 34-30. Beat East Carolina only 20-16, get thumped by a college football playoff participant Cincinnati 56-21. Then they turned around, 3 straight wins over Memphis, Temple, and Tulane. Then lost to SMU, beat UConn 49-17, and then ended the season versus South Florida with a 17-13 win in their season finale there. So there's a look at UCF and their season so far. Let's take a stat comparison look right now between these two programs. Get a better look at how they match up a bit here. Florida, 11th in college football in total offense, 470 yards a game. As we know, they're very weighted by the beginning of the season. UCF, the 68th ranked total offense in the country at 399.7 yards a game. Scoring offense, Gators come in 41st, UCF at 38 there. So even though yardage-wise, Florida has more, scoring-wise, UCF has more. So there you go. Yardage not turning into points necessarily so much, as much as it is for the Gators compared to UCF. Rushing offense, of course, led by, for UCF, Gus Malzahn. He loves to run the ball, runs the ball a bit with his offenses there. 35th in college football. Florida, 21st in college football at 209 yards a game. UCF rushing for 188.7 yards a game. If you're watching the YouTube version, you get the chart right here. It helps explains it a bit more. I'll do the best I can here on the audio version. But here we go. We'll go to total defense just to speed this up a bit. Florida, 46th in total defense in the country. UCF, 55th. UCF gives up 368.8 yards a game. That's while Florida's gaining 470 yards a game, as I said. So there you go. Scoring defense, Florida, 66th in the country, giving up 26.1 points per game. UCF, 25.2. That's good for 55th in the country. Rushing defense is kind of what you want to look at. If Florida's going to probably do much in this game as far as the offensive side of the ball. With Emory Jones starting, you have to rely on him running the ball. Hopefully, that's when we've seen this offense work a good bit with him at quarterback. For it to work at its best, his legs need to be involved. So does Damian Pierce, of course. Feed the man in his last game in a Gator uniform and do it. Because UCF, as you see here, their rushing defense, 72nd in the country, 155.4 yards a game. They give up. Passing defense, they're 41st in the country, so not terrible, only giving up 213 yards a game. We'll get into that a bit more, too, diving into what they do on defense and how they've been playing better on that side of the ball. Opponents have a little bit to do with it, finishing the season with UConn and USF, but still playing better on that side of the ball. Sacks allowed, of course, Florida not giving up many sacks this year, only 12 on the year. UCF has given up 23 sacks this year. That's good for 46 in the country. With Florida only giving up 12, that's tied for 8th best in the country. So there we go. And then here we go, sacks per game. UCF gets to the quarterback 2.83 times a game. Good for 34 sacks this season. It's tied for 28th on the season. Hey, guess what? Florida has the same number. So UCF, Florida, getting to the quarterback 34 times this season. That's tied for 20. Both teams tied for 28th in the country. Tackles for loss. UCF pretty good there. Tied for 18th in the country. 84 tackles for loss on the season. 7 a game. That's more than Florida. Florida tied for 80th with only 5.2 a game. 63 on the season. So there is your statistical ranking comparison. As I said, if you're looking on YouTube, much easier to kind of keep up with a bunch of numbers there as I'm throwing them your way. Right here. So, all right, let's get into a little more of the conversation for UCF and what they are bringing to the Gasperilla Bowl. Said ranked 38th in the nation in scoring offense. That's 32.2 points per game, 68th in total offense with 399.7 yards of total offense per game. Go to the quarterback here, as you heard with the conversation with Brandon there. Mikey King, he was thrust into the action, of course, after Dylan Gabriel went down with a broken collarbone and a loss to Louisville back on September 17th. That was a Friday night game before Florida-Alabama. So that's how long ago it had been. King threw for over 200 yards in 3 of the final 5 regular season games, recording identical yardage totals of 229 yards in wins over Temple and Tulane, and then throwing for 208 in the win over UConn. In the win over Temple, King became the first UCF freshman to throw for 5 touchdowns in a game, and just the 7th night, regardless of the year, to do so. So there is a game there where he's thrown for 5 touchdowns, but I mean, here we go. Threw for over 200 yards in 3 of the final 5 regular season games. Now, he's not, lighting up defenses here. Of course, 229 in wins over Temple and Tulane, and then only 208 over UConn. So it's about the skill players around him. As you heard Brandon say, some injuries there along as well have been ravaged by injuries this year. But Ryan O'Keefe, workhorse at receiver, 77 catches for 727 yards in 12 games, 6 touchdowns through the air. He's had 12 rushes for 164 yards and a score on the ground, and 3 pass completions on 3 attempts. You heard us talk about that. Yeah, 3 pass completions, 3 attempts, 2 touchdowns. There's your kind of Trent Whittemore of the UCF offense right there. But he's thrown for 2 touchdowns and 66 yards on 3 completions. So as I said, that utility player for the UCF offense to get him involved in a few ways. His 77 catches are tied for the 6th most in a single season by UCF Knight. And with 2 more, he'll move into UCF's top 5. It marks the most receptions by a UCF player in a single season in the last 15 years. So Ryan O'Keefe, there we go. If you want me to pinpoint a player, if UCF can get that passing game going just a bit, Ryan O'Keefe is the name to look out for. We didn't talk much with Brandon there about the offensive line for UCF, but they returned their entire offensive line from last season. Includes 6 different offensive linemen that started games in 2020. Crew has started in all but 1 game together this season. Current UCF offensive linemen have now combined for 148 career starts at UCF and 159 total collegiate starts, including Marcus Tatum's 11 starts at Tennessee. So there you go. They're getting the transfer from the SEC along that offensive line, who has started 11 games for him this year to go along with all the starters that return to this year. And so as I said, you can kind of see a lot of experience there up front for them. And as a team that lends itself to UCF ranking 38th in the nation in rushing with 188.7 yards per game. Most experienced running back for them, graduate transfer Isaiah Bauer. You heard us talk about him. Totaled 334 carries and 1,300 yards and 7 touchdowns at Northwestern his previous 3 seasons. In his first game this season as a Knight, Bowser rushed for 33 times for a career-high 172 yards and a touchdown versus Boise State. In week 2, he scored 4 rushing touchdowns, just a 3rd night to do so. He suffered an injury in a loss to Louisville, missed games against Navy, ECU, SMU, UConn, and South Florida. But Johnny Richardson has been the guy to fill in for Bowser when he went down. Richardson leads the team with 693 yards on 101 carries, 6.9 yards per carry average. Second best mark in program history. So Johnny Richardson, we've seen this Florida defense much better at the end of the year as far as, past that South Carolina game and stopping the run versus Stanford. Stanford, lit them up in the air. Missouri, FSU, not a lot of success in running the ball. Missouri, of course, hit their big plays, but when you went into that game after the South Carolina performance, you were thinking that Gator defense was going to just let Missouri run up and down the field on them. Didn't really happen. As I said, there were some big plays there. But we've seen it at times this year, Georgia, LSU, South Carolina, of course. And now you look out for this run game with Johnny Richardson in UCF, with him averaging 6.9 yards a carry. Mark Anthony Richardson has scored 5 times this season in a reserve role as well, 309 yards, 48 carries. He had 8 versus SMU for 104 yards. But Bowser, even with the injuries, still leads the team with 7 touchdowns, 124 carries, with a total of 548 yards, but still leads the team with 7 scores. But he's questionable with that leg injury, so we'll see if he plays or not for UCF. Let's move to the other side of the ball, not the other ball. Let's move to the other side. Defensive coordinator Travis Williams has the Knights ranked 55th in total defense on the season. UCF has given up less than 300 yards of total offense in 5 games this season, in 5 of its 8 wins. There we go. UCF has given up less than 300 yards of total offense in 5 games this season. It's 5 of its 8 wins. Not hard to win games when you're giving up less than 300 yards of offense. After giving up 33.2 points per game last season, the Knights have improved in 2021, allowing only 25.2 points per game and ranking 55th in the country after ranking 92nd in scoring defense a year ago. UCF defense ranks 41st in the nation in pass defense, allowing only 213 passing yards per game. Only one team has put forth a 300-yard passer against the Knights this season. That game was against SMU, November 13th. 5 times this season, Central Florida has allowed less than 200 yards passing in a game, including 4 of the last 7 outings of the regular season. So besides SMU, they weren't giving up many passing yards. doesn't really lend itself to Emory Jones to kind of figure it out and pass all over them. As I said, if he can get the run game going with Pierce and his own legs, then I think the passing game can open up. But we've seen against other defenses way too many times, throwing way too many picks. Got to be able to run the ball. UCF has shown they don't let many passing yards on them. UCF had just 2 team sacks through the first 4 games, but averaged 4 sacks per game over the last 8 games and 4.5 per game over the last 6 contests of the season. So getting after the quarterback as the season progressed. Knights ranked 28th in the nation with 2.83 sacks per game on the season and 18th with 7 tackles a loss per game. A couple names to watch out for here on defense for UCF. Tatum Bethune led the team 101 tackles, ranked 2nd in the AAC and 21st in the nation with 9.2 tackles per game. He had an 18 tackle game versus USF the last time out for Central Florida, and he had a 17 tackle game earlier this season versus ECU, East Carolina there. Their buck, Big Cat Bryant, you heard us talk about him. He followed Gus Malzahn from Auburn to UCF. He appeared in and started all 12 regular season games at defensive end. Earned first-team All-ACC honors from the league's coaches. Led the Knights and ranked 2nd in the AAC with 14 tackles for loss during the regular season. Also led the team and tied for 2nd in the conference with 6 sacks. All that, only 50 tackles. He's just disruptive. Helps his teammates out there. 8 quarterback hurries, 3 pass breakups. There for Big Cat Bryant coming over from Auburn to UCF. So, man, I don't know what to think about this game. Where's Florida going to be at mentally? All the coaching changes, of course, the transfers that are happening, all the talk of kind of just moving forward to Billy Napier. But look, you've been put through practice these last couple of weeks in preparation for this bowl game. Billy Napier's been on the sideline. You hope you want to go impress the new coach a bit, but you know what's the mental capacity? What's the mental aspect right now at this point in the season? You ready just to move on? Ready just to get the season over with? It didn't seem that way versus FSU. You went out there and played one of your. Now, granted, you let them come back and claw back, but you went out there and put one of your better performances starting in the second half of the season. You got to win. You jumped out to a big lead. You let FSU claw back, but the points that we saw of this team just looked like they didn't want to be on the field. It wasn't there versus FSU. You let them call back, yeah, but you wanted to be out there. You proved you wanted to be out there. You wouldn't play for your teammates. Can you bleed it over into this bowl game? Can that come over as well? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. I didn't have the answers for it versus FSU either. But I think getting off to a good start, keeping in this game, you don't want to go lose to UCF. You don't want to be the first Gator team to go lose to UCF. So there's somewhat pride there. It's probably safe to say UCF and their fan base and players, they want to go win this game. It might mean a little bit more to them at in 8-4 UCF versus a 6-6 Florida. To them, it doesn't matter there's a lame duck Florida staff. It really doesn't. For Florida, it does. You want to go win the game. You don't want to go lose the game. Any game you go play. Looking from a fan perspective. But how's the coaching staff going to put it? Are they busy looking for other jobs? You hope they have enough respect for these players they've recruited. You go coach them one more time. Go coach them up. Go put them out there on the field in successful situations. You kind of maybe auditioning for your next job a little bit. These players, you're auditioning for Billy Napier if you're going to be around this program next year. So there's plenty to play for. First of all, you just don't want to go lose. Second of all, go beat UCF. Third of all, and lastly, it's an audition for your next head coach if you're going to be on this team next year. And to extend that, last time, if you're Damian Pierce, and if you're not a player that's, Kyrie Elam could easily sit out this game. Nobody would blame him. All indications are he's going to play. So there's some players out there who want to go out there and play for the logo, uniform. Hopefully they go out there and perform well. Go get Florida a win. I'm not even going to try and predict the score. I don't know what kind of Florida team is going to show up. I think if Florida can go out there and Emory Jones can use his legs calm down, not throw as many interceptions. Let this, Greg Knox and this offensive staff lean on Dameon Pierce, lean on this run game. May not blow UCF out, but I think it's a pretty good path to a victory. We see that. We see this defense play like they did versus Missouri for the most part, like they did versus FSU for the most part. You can easily win this game. Do they want to go do it? That's the question. Hopefully so. Hopefully we can go enjoy watching our Gators play one more time till the next time, till September. Or the last time till September of next year when they open up with Utah. This is the last game we'll see our Gators play for about 8 months. So hopefully they give us something to brag about one more time this season. All right, let's get into these new hires before we get off here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. Now, I'm doing these in chronological order of when they were announced. So that was the easiest way to keep up with it. So nothing more to it than that. Here we go. Katie Turner, Assistant Athletic Director of Recruiting Strategy. It was announced last Thursday. Turner heads to Gainesville after spending 2 seasons at Georgia, where she worked as the Bulldogs' Director of Recruiting Operations. As part of Georgia's recruiting staff, Turner contributed to the acquisition of talent that helped the Bulldogs secure the nation's top 5 and top 3 recruiting classes for 2021 and 2022, respectively. Prior to Georgia, Turner served on Napier's staff at Louisiana as a Director of Football on-campus recruiting from 2018 to 2020. The Raging Cajuns garnered the number 1 recruiting class in the Sun Belt in consecutive years in 19 and 20. Turner's experience expands beyond the college ranks, having worked with the Buffalo Bills as a graduate assistant in the community relations department and business development department. In 2016, the graduate from University of Alabama, Turner began her career on Alabama's recruitment team as a student. She assisted in the Tide's recruiting efforts from 2013 to 2016, when Alabama secured the number 1 recruiting class in the nation each of those years. So Katie Turner, while not an on-field role, very important here in recruiting, going to be putting when recruits visit the University of Florida on campus, making sure they are taken care of, making sure everything goes smoothly in the process. And look, you've heard me mention it here on Gators Breakdown plenty of times out there. I've talked to some people connected to high school recruits who are taking visits all around the South and taking visits to Georgia and taking visits to Alabama and taking visits to Florida. Florida has not compared one bit to those schools in the way those high school recruits are treated. The entertainment that happens at those campuses when recruits visit, that's going to change now. Katie Turner knows what goes on at the University of Georgia those last couple of years in making an impression on families, making an impression on recruits. That helps in recruiting. Now, as I said, it starts with the head coach. It starts with him, and it filters down to the staff. But then you start bringing in assets like Casey Turner, who have a background in big-time major recruiting, recent big-time major recruiting at the University of Georgia. You know how it's done. You know what needs to be done. You know what impresses these kids out there. You're bringing that over to the University of Florida now. I think it's great. She has a previous relationship with Billy Napier, a lot of experience together. They know how to work together. They can hit the ground running right here. When Florida starts these on-campus visits again in January, I expect a whole different approach than what we've seen these last few years. All right, let's keep it going. Jacob LaFrance announced that he will serve on staff as Director of Player Personnel. Native of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, LaFrance joins the Gator staff after spending the last 3 seasons with Napier in Louisiana, where he helped the Raging Cajuns garner the number 1 recruiting class in the Sun Belt Conference in consecutive years, once again in 2019 and 2020. Prior to Louisiana, LaFrance served in the same capacity at UTSA, that's Texas San Antonio, from 2016 to 2019, where he oversaw prospect evaluation, roster management, and assisted with NFL liaisons on visits and research. Among other duties, LaFrance spent 2 seasons, 2014 and 2015, as a recruiting analyst at Maryland, where he oversaw day-to-day recruiting operations. He's a 2012 LSU graduate. Elliot LaFrance was a personal assistant for the Tigers from 2019 to 2014. Played a key role in landing five top 10 recruiting classes during his time in Baton Rouge. So there you go, Director of Player Personnel, Jacob LaFrance, going to be really key in identifying the talent acquisition part of this process for the Florida Gators. Here we go. Building that army. So to continue that, Joe Danos was also announced, Director of Player Athletic Development. A native of New Orleans, he joins the Gator staff after spending the last 9 years working in 2 different professional sports leagues. Recently, he served as head strength and conditioning coach for Inter Miami Football Club in the MLS from 2020 to 2021. Before that, he was the performance manager and strength and conditioning assistant coach for the New York Giants for 7 seasons from 2013 to 2019. Dano spent 3 seasons, 2010 to 2012, at Florida State, where he was an assistant strength and conditioning coach and played a key role in the building of the Seminoles' 2013 national championship team. Prior to FSU, Dano served on the SMU strength staff, in addition to spending 2 years as an assistant strength coach at LSU, working with football and several Olympic sports. Certified strength and conditioning specialist throughout the National Strength and Conditioning Association, and is a certified coach by USA Weightlifting, the national governing body for weightlifting in the United States. Also a member of the Collegiate Strength and Conditioning Coaches Association, National Strength and Conditioning Association, and USA Weightlifting. So Joe Danos, they're going to be helping Mark Hockey with the strength and conditioning program at the University of Florida. He is the Director of Player Athletic Development. So a lot of experience here. A lot of top-line experience. They're in the MLS. They're in the NFL. He's a performance manager and strength and conditioning assistant coach for the New York Giants. So Florida really hitting it pretty hard there in the strength and conditioning department with Danos and Hockey. All right. Last couple of announcements here. Doug Domingue. Hopefully I'm saying that right. He's the Director of Recruiting Innovation. Hitting the recruiting part of this again, he spent the last 4 seasons, 2018 to 2021, at Louisiana. First joined the Raging Cajuns as a Director of Digital Strategy, serving as a creative lead and lone digital video creator of all 16 varsity sports programs. In his first year, Napier selected him to join the staff full-time. Promoted to Senior Director of Digital Strategy in 2020, instrumental in elevating the Raging Cajuns' content standards to that of national prominence, was a key element in landing the Sun Belt's #1 recruiting class for 3 consecutive years. Look, we always talk about this, visits and all that type of stuff for recruits, but also, those social media assets you send out there, the offers, the commit graphics, the video graphics for recruits, plays a large part in it up too. Social media, such a huge part of all this. Those players want to be able to share all that stuff. You got to make it look good. That's what Doug Domingue does here, University of Florida. All those videos we've watched of Louisiana the last few weeks. He played a large role in those videos. The drama setting of all those videos of the end of the Billy Napier era in Louisiana. Putting all that together, huge part right here. One more that was announced here on this Monday. Ashore Pira, announced Director of Football Operations, Logistics, and Analytics. It was announced today on Monday. Native of Chicago, Illinois, Pira, yeah, hopefully I'm saying that right. Pira served as Director of Player Engagement at Louisiana from 2019 to 2021 under Napier. Also spent 2 seasons, 2018 and 2019, as the Director of Recruiting for the University of Central Arkansas. 2011 St. Leo University graduate, Pira coached at both the collegiate and high school levels prior to assuming off-field duties. Pira's coaching stops include several Florida high schools. If you're watching the YouTube version, you see the image of Pira here. And if you're very active on social media, you have seen him on these visits the last week or so. Well, last week before the official visit weekend for when coaches were allowed to be on the road. Pira was making visits. You saw him in Florida visiting high schools. I'm sure reconnecting since he had those prior stops at several Florida high schools. So a lot of people I've talked to behind the scenes say this guy can get it done. Very active in recruiting. Great relationship builder. We've seen the beginnings of that on the social media landscape starting last week. So there we go. All the new hires, all the new staff hires for the University of Florida off the field. And look, you can tell this is all these images and all these stories and all the summaries that we get from what these people have done. This is it's put out there under the direction of Billy Napier, announcing all these hires. No matter your role on this team, go back to his opening press conference. Everybody plays a role, he said. He's showing them the importance of being part of this Florida staff by putting out these graphics. Florida doesn't have to do this. He doesn't have to do that as the head coach. We saw, but this is who Billy Napier is. Go back to the signing day press conference and everybody he thanked for helping him in that crazy busy week. And then all these hires are being made and all these graphics and all these stories that FloridaGators.com are putting out and these biographies that they're putting out of these people. It's calculated. It's a way to say thank you for Billy Napier. Take care of the people around you. Show respect of the people around you. That's what he's doing here. That's what he's doing here in the announcement of all these, the army that he's assembling, the army that he talked about. Putting it out there on display for everyone to see. Great gesture there. So, all right, there we go. That would do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown, your Gasperilla Bowl preview. Florida, UCF. Don't know how excited you are for it, but one more time to watch these Gators. Thanks to Brandon Helwig from UCFsports.com, part of the Rivals Network, joining us here on Gators Breakdown, giving us a preview of UCF. And one more look at all those hires there for the Gators. So, all right, that'll do it for this episode. I'm the host of Gators Breakdown, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thanks for listening to this episode of Gators Breakdown.